Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to One More Round with Josh Norris. Today, I'm very excited. I have my beautiful wife with me. We're going to do a podcast today, just kind of talking about business, marriage, raising a family, those types of things. So, before we get into it, this just kind of came to my mind a few days ago. I'm like, you should come on Friday and we could talk about things. Because if you've been in business for any period of time, or you've been married for any period of time, there's going to be a lot of things you can relate to, and hopefully through some of the stumbles and things that we've gone through, there might be some things you can learn from this. So, welcome, honey.
Thanks, babe. Happy to be here.
Yeah, this is,
long time no see.
Yeah, exactly. From this morning, we had Thanksgiving yesterday, which was a lot of fun. Went golfing and hung out with some friends.
We did. It was a great time.
Yeah. So when we started talking about this, it was kind of important to me because I think there's a lot of people that are in business together that have been married, and have a lot of questions on what's the best way to do it. Like whether you're in the same business together, or like you had a real successful company, Dorado Vinyl, that did all kinds of custom things for people, like custom cups and that kind of thing. Right. During that time, like what was it like for you starting that business? Because you started out of necessity.
Right. So that was a complete accident in getting that started. It was a question of, I decided that I was spending too much money on getting custom things made for us and our family. And I was like, I think that I can do it ourselves. So I hopped on Facebook Marketplace and went and bought the Cricut from somebody that I'm pretty sure was posing to be somebody else on Facebook Marketplace. So I showed up there and I exchanged the cash for the machine, and she told me that it had never been used before. I got home and opened it. It turned out that there was some practice cuts done on it, which I didn't really mind about, so that was fine. And it sat there up in the office for quite a while until one of our other neighbor friends, Billy, had requested some cups being made for a quinceañera that his son was going to be in. And so he came to me, he's like, do you still have your Cricut machine? I'm like, yeah, the only thing I've cut on in it is like a circle out of cardstock paper, but I'm sure we could figure out how to make some cups. And that was how it started. And we literally picked this type of adhesive foil that was going on these cups because it was making it kind of shiny. And it was one of the most difficult things to work on, so it was like baptism by fire in learning how to do all that. And that started March of 2018.
Yeah, and you ran it, I saw it for 2 years, and it was profitable the entire time. I mean, there were several months where you were making over 10 grand, and it was fun for me to watch, except for how much work you were putting in.
Right. So I was probably working about 16 to 18 hours a day. And it was just because there was a lot of time constraints on that. Like if people are ordering for gifts or special events like that, it has to be done during that time. So the kids were still, it was a few years ago, so Viv was probably a little under 2 when we got started. So, there was trying to maintain the family too. So a lot of my time making everything was spent after everybody went to bed.
Yeah.
So I'd be up till 3 o'clock in the morning or so, and then have to take little power naps before waking up to get everybody ready for school.
Yeah, and today we're running Regenerate IV together, and you're doing like a lot of the day-to-day operations there, and that's been a lot of fun. But I was trying to think back. I don't think there was ever a time we've been together that we haven't been in business. That's
right, because when we first met, you were building Amway, and it was kind of like I came on board with that, and the story behind us is we met and married in 7 months, so there wasn't much time that we weren't building a business at all. So it went from Amway to Aftershock to Regenerate, and here we are still.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the Amway days, because that was a fun time, and people can have their thoughts on multi-level marketing one way or the other. And quite honestly, looking back, Amway was probably not the best business vehicle, but man, I learned a ton. That we created relationships that we still have to this day, that we still do business with some of these people, but like the education that we got while we were working on that together, I think that's kind of what solidified a foundation for us to be able to work together.
Right, because I've always been involved with like different organizations as far as like personal leadership and stuff. I was always deemed more of a leader in school. And so it's just more of a natural fit for me, like when we started going to these types of conferences that were like leadership conferences for us to do. And I just eat that stuff up anyways. Any times that somebody is like sharing their experience, like if it's something that I can learn from without having to go through that experience myself, I will definitely take note and save myself the trouble of doing that. But yeah, we did. We had great relationships throughout Amway, and it taught us a lot about how to become a people person, how to get along with people, how to manage people. And I think that was really our starting foundation for everything else that we did.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a great training ground. I mean, when I look back at it, I mean, the books, the CDs that we listened to, we turned our vehicle into a university on wheels. And
yeah.
I mean, I probably listened to legit 1,000 CDs of different people and success stories and tactical things too. But then like the books, like How to Win Friends, Influence People, it's one of the most foundational books I think for both of us, because I would say most people that know us know that we're people and we care about whoever's in front of us.
Right.
And because of that, like we've been able to grow a gigantic network of just wonderful people. And talk a little bit about that. Like how do you cultivate some of these relationships and like building long-term relationships?
Sure. So I think a big part of it is like when you're in conversation with somebody, being a good listener. Sometimes you have these conversations with people when you're out and about in the marketplace that are me monsters. They just want to talk about them all the time, and you don't really learn much about them, just about what's on the surface. So it's great to be a listener about that. People always want to share stories about themselves, and then being able to relate that for later when you need to reference something that they were talking about. And I think just being genuine about all of it. You don't want to be a fake person when you're out there meeting people and connecting and making these connections to grow your companies more. And for me, it's more of connecting on like something that we related to. So like, at a lot of our networking things, if they also have kids, that's an easy thing for us to relate to. If they're married, that's also another easy thing for us to relate to. So I think just finding those things that you connect with and building the relationship from there.
Yeah, well, I remember the old thing in Amway, right? Family, occupation, recreation, and message. And that's how, if you don't know what that is, basically we would go out and we would meet random strangers. And we got really, really good at it.
We've also been kicked out of Barnes & Noble.
Target, I got kicked out of. I went and yelled at the security guard one time because I was just having a conversation with the dude. He was like, "You can't be soliciting." I'm like, "I'm not selling anything. I'm literally just talking to this dude."
Yeah.
And you talk about family because again, everybody wants to talk about their family, their occupation. What do they do for a living? What do they do for fun? And then our message was always, do you ever look for ways to make extra money back in those days?
Right.
And then if they were, like now you would establish rapport. See, and I look back on that, and in my mind, some of it was a little trickery, right? It was not, the most honest way of meeting people,
right?
And I do regret a little bit of that. However, because of that, I got so freaking good at meeting any individual, and by the time I was done with that person, like they felt better about their day. That was just one of the things that I learned during those days. And today, what I try to do, and I know you do as well, is when you hear something that you can make a connection for somebody. You connect them with the person, you connect them with a product or a service of whatever that they were talking about.
For sure.
And when you're intentional about that, what's cool is it starts to really fill your network with people that are thinking about you in different ways. And what I mean is, if you make an introduction to with two people and they're together, they're having lunch and you're not there, well, chances are your name's going to come up because you introduced them. The more people you have like that, it connects this web for you to be able to always have somebody you can refer, like, our insurance guy, right? Ryan Weston.
Right.
Ryan has been amazing, and we've referred him to a lot of people because, like, anytime with our car or house insurance we've needed something done, like, it's like, boom. He's back to me in 15, 20 minutes in an email, and he's already gotten quotes and all this kind of stuff.
Same. I reached out to him just this week after starting the new LLC with On the Bright Side for the B12 and shots and Botox parties, and he was right back to me after that. And it's a little more challenging because it is a mobile service, so we are working on finding like the right carrier for that. And he connected me with another lady, and she reached right out, and he was like, "Yeah, please take care of Jess. Like they're great customers, and they refer me a lot of business." And so she was able to find something that will work for us. So that's good.
Yeah, and that was just it, because he has his own network growing, and he's always taking care of people. Like, he's been very, very successful in the insurance world. So, we've always kind of done that. But I want to go back to, like, when did you know that you could be a business owner, like that you could be an entrepreneur?
So I was raised in a house. My parents were business owners from the time that I was, let me think. It was probably middle school because it was my grandpa's company, and then when he passed away, my dad got the company handed down to him. And so it was at that time that like my dad was able to take over. So they operated county landfills in Kern County in California, and he's done that for over 40 years. They had contracts up until last year, and so that's what they did. So I always saw my mom did the payroll, my mom did all the insurance paperwork for everything, because when you're running all these giant landfills, there's a lot of money and a lot of insurance that has to go into people operating heavy equipment. And so I always saw it there at the house, and my mom was always in some sort of also Mary Kay or Tupperware or Princess House or selling something like that. So she always had like her little side business too while they were building their big business. So it was always like a part of me because I grew up in it.
So you kind of like watched it, and did you always know that eventually you'd want to go into business for yourself?
So my original plan was to go to school for physical therapy, and I transferred from UC San Diego out here to ASU. And then it was my senior year where I was taking 21 units of writing classes and playing racquetball and tennis, and ended up with the beginning stages of carpal tunnel, and that I didn't want to continue pursuing my physical therapy, because that was my plan, was to finish that and then run my own practice with physical therapy. But once that happened, I decided, no, I don't want people to be coming to me and not happy because they're going to be going through a bunch of pain when they come and see me. So I just pivoted. I didn't want to change my major because when I had transferred, they had already cut my credits in half. So I just finished it out and pivoted from there, found something else to do.
Yeah, I remember your parents had to instill like this crazy work ethic in you, because when we first met, you had just moved out here from San Diego, not maybe a year prior, but most of your credits didn't transfer, correct? So I watched you graduate in 4 years after literally losing half of your credits in 2 years. And you did every summer school, every winter, that kind of thing. I mean, was it your parents that instilled that like work ethic and just watching that and observing it?
I think so. I think my parents are some of the hardest working people that I know. Watching my dad work 7 days a week and always being gone and helping, all the different locations that they had. And then my mom just working so hard on that side of the business, and then everything around the house and taking all of us kids. I'm the oldest of 4, so there was lots of transporting people from place to place, and we lived 10 minutes outside of town and middle of the desert, so it was always a drive to go anywhere or do anything. So just watching them, I think, was a great example of being a hard worker, for sure.
I think it's something that we all have to look at, and I know you and I are very intentional about that and what our kids see us do in our businesses. Like, they watched you work in Dorado Vinyl. They've watched us work in Regenerate. They've watched me build Aftershock, now, Brandindo. And I think they see us go to work, and I've started to see that their work ethic is just naturally growing, and they're doing things without having to be told as much. And even though 5, 10, and 12, you don't expect them to be perfect at that. Like, I've noticed those tendencies in the last year. Have you?
Totally, because our kids are always looking to do something to make money, right? Like, they aren't ready to they don't want to wait to start making money. So they've set up lemonade stands in front of the house. They've made perler beads that they sell in front of the house, and then they want to keep doing different things like that. So I know that I think getting older, they will probably, because they see us, having our own companies and building that it will be hard for them to kind of be part of a corporation doing a job, because they see the freedom that we have too in doing our businesses.
Yeah, and then the fruits of the labor, you saw that with your parents. I think our kids have seen that with our life, and not that it's always been easy, man. There's been times where I told them a story on one of the podcasts about our last $20 about a decade ago, and were you there at the time?
We were at the condo.
I know we were at the condo. Were you at the condo?
Yes. And I remember you coming upstairs freaking out about it, and I was like, I don't know what to do. That was an interesting setup. Going back to the condo, because we were there. It was a 2-bedroom condo, fully renovated and everything. We were paying $700 a month, and it's so crazy to think about now, how it changed. But that was a tough time, and I remember you sitting there on the laptop just applying for job after job after job after job, and I think you ended up applying for 100 and something jobs, and nobody called back. It was just a rough time. It was 2012. 2011. Because I was pregnant with Zach, so it would have been 2011.
Yeah, I remember that. That was the most discouraging thing on the planet, because I had been in my business for myself. Like even after I worked for Pure Fitness, I got the contract with Pure Fitness later, and then they sold, and so I lost that portion of the business. And then, you know, I was just starting Aftershock and doing, like, learning everything I possibly could, like design and all this kind of stuff. And it was tough. Like, and we had Christmas coming up and all this kind of stuff. And finally, I'm like, cool, I'll bite the bullet. I'll get a job, no problem, and I'll still, you know, run my company. And when I had applied to all those people, and I couldn't get a freaking call back, I couldn't get an interview. And I always, you know, I've always had a pretty good confidence and consider myself a good communicator and have skill sets to be able to give to a company. Nobody wanted me. I couldn't get a freaking interview at Quick Trip. Like, so that was almost a moment for me. It was like a God moment. Like, hey, just keep going. Things will work out. And it wasn't easy. That next 6 months, you know, that's what we did is we kept going, and then, you know, it worked out. Thank goodness our kids were not, you know, at an age to be able to witness that hard time, because that could be challenging for sure. But, you know, we've done all kinds of different things. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about business is we've probably failed more than we've succeeded.
For sure.
And it's like that's what we've learned from. But as long as you don't quit in the process, or you pivot and you adjust, there's always a win to be found.
Right. And I think it's important too to like notice the signs of like when it's really not working out. Like, do you want to keep spinning your wheels? Do you want to keep losing money in something that you're putting your time and effort into? And if the answer is no, then it's time to walk away and find something else. It's not that we don't have the skills in order to build a company. Maybe it's just not the right company for that time. And I think we found that with Amway. Once we had kids, it was hard for us to go out and like meet people and do different things because we had little kids at home. And then like with Dorado Vinyl, I ran into issues with supplies as soon as COVID hit. So it was like I didn't have supplies in order to finish making, you know, everything. So you just take it as a you know, lesson learned and move forward with it and take what you learned and apply it to the next thing, and then it's going to grow faster. I think I'm a firm believer in that like you go through everything in your companies and it's for a reason. It's going to help you in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, being married and in business, because we really don't know anything else. Like it's, you know, we've only been married once. We've been married for 16 years, long time, which is, the only reason I feel like we can speak as somewhat of an authority on this is like, I think the average marriage in America is like 7 to 8 years. But being self-employed, being married 16 years and on to, you know, 60 or however long we live, it kind of gives us a unique perspective to talk to people on it. But like, what are some of the things marriage-wise that you think would be helpful for people to understand about building a business and building a family?
I think it's just all about communication. You know, there's so many things that are happening around the house and then things that are happening within the business. So as long as there's parameters that are set and expectations that are set out there and communication is open, then there shouldn't really be much room for error or issues because you're communicating about it fully, and that's how you work best together. I know like there would be times where like where people can get in trouble, and we've been here before too, but like when there's expectations that aren't voiced or spoken about, and so it was like I would expect you to help out around the house without even like asking you to do it, or like things like that. So it's just being open about that kind of stuff for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think that's something that in not just marital relationships, but even like business partner relationships, all that stuff has to be discussed, because like if you're not discussing it and you're just expecting them to read your mind, like how is that going to work? I mean, but if you voice it and you talk about it and you come to a decision one way or the other, like that's when magic happens, because it's like that's the 1 + 1 = 3.
Right.
But if you know you're not voicing those things, 1 + 1 never even adds, because it's like still in your head. So I think, you know, that's one thing I agree with communication, talking about money, like, you know, actually having hard conversations sometimes about here's what we can do, here's what we can't do. You know, here's where our money's being invested. Here's what we're doing with the company, just so you kind of everybody knows what's going on.
Right.
And then talking to your kids about money. I think that's a big thing too, is like communicating with kids about your goals, your dreams, where you're going, so they can understand when it might look like, oh man, I can't do this. I can't join this football league. I'm in, you know, I'm already in 2. I can't join a third because it's, you know, another $300 that, you know, our parents are putting towards their company or whatever the case may be. But then talking to the kids about the win. here's why we're doing this now. Here's the next house we want to buy. Here's the second home we want to buy up in the Flagstaff area. Here's the vacations we want to go. Here's how we want to go to Disneyland. We don't want to, just go to Disneyland and wait in line forever. There's a way you can go to Disneyland, and it's stupid expensive, but whatever. You have a guided tour, and you get to cut the entire line. And you get taken in places that nobody gets to go to and I think it's like $20,000.
I've already accepted that you will never return to Disneyland unless we are there in that capacity, because you hate waiting in line and walking around and doing all those things. So
Yeah. Waiting in line and traffic are like my two
that is true.
big issues.
But the kids have been really good about that. Even like with our trip coming up, to South Carolina, it was, they wanted to do a few more things over the last few months, and I'm like, we're not going to do that right now. We're instead going to save those experiences for when we go out on vacation, which is crazy. Like, this is off the wall. Like, we just decided that we were going to finally use our timeshare that we had been bought into in 2018.
Yep.
Right? And so we haven't been able to use it because, it's every other year. And our first would have been 2020, which nobody was traveling during that time. And now this is the time to use it. So we decided to go somewhere that none of us had ever been before, and it was going to be South Carolina. We're going to Myrtle Beach next month.
Yeah, and it was cool because, we already had that part paid for, and we're like, okay, well, let's look at plane tickets. And plane tickets were going to be like $7,500 for the five of us.
I know.
And I'm like, yeah, no, I ain't doing that. I mean, that's silly.
Right.
And it's not that we couldn't have, had the means to do it, but why wouldn't we just take some of that money and put it towards a nicer Christmas, a nicer trip?
Right.
So we decided to road trip it, which is going to be a lot of fun.
Yep.
And the cool thing,
there's a lot of people doubting us, but I think we'll do it.
Oh yeah, no, it'll be great. It'll be one of those things where the kids will remember it, and I'll never forget. Like Matt and Kristen, they've always gone on these long road trips with their kids, and they have an RV, but it was one of his favorite things to do every summer, and he would talk about different stories of where they went and all this kind of stuff.
Well, and I think with the kids, they're old enough now, well, they'll remember the trip and everything that we're doing there. Like, before, when they were a little bit younger, they might not have remembered everything that was going to be going on with that. But also, we've kind of moved ourselves in a way in our companies to where we can do everything kind of mobily. Like, before, when I was doing all the crafting, I couldn't really leave and travel because I couldn't take all that equipment with me. Our entire front room was transformed. So now it's nice to just be able to take the laptop and our phone and be able to do our work while we're away, so we can take these kinds of trips.
Yeah, and that's the other freedom that I wish more people would understand about the tough things that you have to go through in entrepreneurship. The payoff is the freedom and time that you have. Like, you still got to work your butt off, and we still might be working, the entire time on the trip, or at least, part of it, taking phone calls, doing meetings, making sure our, on my side, campaigns, get launched the way they're supposed to, connecting with our sales team. But you can do that in a car, you can do that from a hotel room, and you can still have time to have fun, see the sights with your kids, go to restaurants and really have a great time.
Yeah.
But that freedom is something that it was always something I wanted, and Amway introduced that. And then the 4-hour work week completely just ruined any thought I had of ever, going back into the corporate world, because it was a book that I think a lot of people misunderstand and they misapply some of the things. But for me, it just opened my eyes to where you can work anywhere. You don't have to be tied to a desk. And I say that ironically, like, I do love coming to the office. You know that. Because I can go to one place, I can work.
Yeah.
It's usually just me. Sometimes, Rick's here, but it's like, I like having that freedom to not have to go.
Right.
So what else would you tell, couples or entrepreneurs that are growing a business together, that they're living life? Anything other than communication that you think of?
I think just establishing roles too, about who's going to be involved in what part. That way you don't have any crossover or confusion about who is doing what for the company or at home or anything like that. So I think just establishing, for you do more of the day-to-day things here with the other company, but now with Regenerate, I'm taking the phone calls, but I'm still able to reach out to you for questions and things like that. So I think establishing those roles, so we're both not replying at the same time, to the requests coming in, I know that I'm the one that's answering the requests and things like that. So there's not that overlap. So I think just establishing those roles and just keeping it more of a easy flow for the business totally helps.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I have to throw this out there. Not everybody should be an entrepreneur, though.
No.
Yeah,
and I feel that we run into that kind of a lot now. I think that with the Great Resignation and everybody just kind of quitting their job and starting their own business, I think a lot of people get in over their heads thinking that they can do all the things. And you'll find that a lot of companies don't survive past the first 5 years of business. So it's a lot of work to be able to make it work and do those things. And I think sometimes people just grow so fast that if it was like a, hot item that they were selling during that time, it was just took off and they grew so fast that they didn't learn a lot of the business things that they needed to. And then they find themselves in trouble with a bigger company and more cash flow and those sort of things.
So yeah, like to your point where somebody grows so fast, because you're right, they do have some unicorn product that just sells off the chains, and you're like, oh, this is how business is. I can just make money and everything's going to work. Then they got that first failure, and they don't have, the nest egg to be able to get past that, or they don't know from business experience how you make sure that you can get to that next product when the second, third, fourth, fifth one doesn't do as well, or a service that's super hot, but due to the nature of the economy, maybe its price point, that service is no longer as in high demand. And like we saw things in the home service when I was the CEO of HOA.com, one thing that we first saw in the pandemic was that nobody wanted anybody in their home. So there were certain types of businesses like pest control, housekeeping, that really were challenging because like nobody wanted anybody in their home.
Right.
Then you saw other service industries that grew like crazy, like the backyard design companies, the roofing companies, plumbing, anything that was like, how do I better my house because I'm stuck here, started to grow like crazy. But then everything opened up, and a lot of that has gone down as well. So it's just watching the shifts in market and trying to like predict what the next several years are going to look like. And if this happens, here's what I'm going to do, and having a backup plan to everything. And that's something I think you and I both really worked hard at. And we always kind of know that if it hits the fan, we're going to do this. Right. If this hits the fan, we're going to do this. This is how we're going to pivot before it even happens, so that you got that game plan and you get that comfortability. And not that being an entrepreneur is supposed to be comfortable, because it's not. I mean, it's the most uncomfortable thing to a degree in certain periods that there possibly is. Because until somebody's had to make a payroll when they didn't have the money in their account and they had to figure out in 2 days how to do it, where's that 15 grand come from? And you figure it out. That is, there's sleepless nights that I've had, sleepless nights that you've had, going through those types of things. And that's what I mean when I first said that not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur, because that pressure can break pipes. And it's not something that is for everybody. And quite honestly, some people just need to be helpers in a business. They need to be entrepreneurs, thinking about how can I better the business that I'm in, but enjoy collecting that steady paycheck. And yeah, your paycheck might not be as big as the owner, but maybe it is. There's a lot of businesses I know that, especially in the first 4, 5, 6 years, people that work for them get paid more than them. Yeah. And that's totally fine, because you're building an empire, you're building an organization. And also like that delayed gratification when it comes to building a company is crucial, because it's not all about today. It's not all about what happens in a month. It's like, hey, how's everything going to look in 5 years? Right. What are the decisions we need to make now to make sure in 5 years we do have the money we want and the lifestyle we want? And that's something, goes back to Amway, I think, with us too. Yeah. So this was fun. I think we need to do this more often. For sure. Yeah, I think we should make this at least once a quarter, maybe even more frequently than that. And what we'll do is we'll have people ask questions, or kind of gather questions in the next several months that we hear, and then we'll kind of go over that. But if you tell everybody a little bit about On the Bright Side.
So On the Bright Side is kind of our spinoff from Regenerate IV. We were kind of slower through the summertime for IVs, and it was just an idea that I had when I was going to be taking over operations to host a party at our house and just kind of gain awareness for the IVs and everything like that. So it was all the bees breakfast. So I was just trying to add in things that were going to be starting with bees. So we had brunch and bubbles, and within Regenerate we had B12 shots that we would be able to do. And then I was like, wait, what else starts with B? Botox. So then we have a new medical director for that part of a business that we are able to do mobile Botox parties. So far it's just been done at the house, but it was something that I saw a need for, being able to offer at a lower price than a lot of the spas do, because they have the overhead of like their space and their injectors and everything like that. We have injectors that are trained that work at spas and everything, and this is just like a side thing that they're doing. So
yeah, very cool.
It's been working out. We're going to be doing the grand opening in January sometime soon, so I'll be posting a little bit about that.
Awesome. How can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram. My personal one is Jessica A. Norris, and my business one is On the Bright Side Jess. And then anything you tag me in, they can find me that way too.
That's awesome. Well, this is a lot of fun. I know you guys got some good stuff out of this. Please share this out. You know, if you know couples that are in business together that might need to hear this and have some new ideas, share it out with them. We'd appreciate it. That's how we grow the show. It's the only way this thing grows because I'm not putting any money into advertising it. So I appreciate you listening, and we will see you soon.